Hi guys, it's album review time. We've got Inglorious and 5. Well, this album's coming out on June the 6th on Frontiers. A nice early review for you. Inglorious are a British rock band. Brought out the last album in 2021. So, does this album live up to that? Let's find out. So, straight out of the gate, Nathan James, the mainstay in this band and the vocalist, has recruited a whole load of new members since the last album. So I'll go through the members and how they play their part on this album very soon. And I'll get into the musicians in a minute. So we've had an original member come back as well, so we'll get into that. Songwriting, Nathan and the original member that I'm talking about, Colin Parkinson, they're the songwriting duo on this album. They handled the songwriting. Just to let you know. So, Inglorious fans, will you be happy with this album? And because it's a bit of when members changing that, I love the last album. It's a bit of a worry, isn't it? Is it going to capture that? I think Inglorious fans will be very happy with this album, as it already adds to their brilliant back catalogue, and probably revisits their old sound, and probably that has something to do with Colin Parkinson, I would say. Perhaps of the first two albums, I think it captures that, but also whereas We Will Ride had quite a decent bit of light and shade, and that's what I loved about that album. It had some real heavy parts and really emotional parts, and I think that this album captures that as well. So it's a really cool mix of all that. It's probably their heaviest album so far, I would say. And that could be partly due to a new member of the band. I'll get into the guitar work in a minute, but I think it is their heaviest. There's parts of this album that are really, really heavy and crunchy, and probably the most crunchy they've been all through their catalogue, I would say. Now, just before I get into the sound of this album, I'm going to go on to the production and the mix in a minute. I did catch this band live a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago, and man, I became more of a fan of Inglorious after seeing them live. Nathan James was proper on point that night. He was actually ill. He was actually sick. I spoke to him after the show, and he's actually suffering with a really bad cold, but you wouldn't have known it. He just held the audience in the palm of their hand. And I dragged the missus along to that one, and she didn't know whether she wanted to go or not, and she became a fan after that gig as well. So that's brilliant. That live performance from Inglorious made me more of a fan than I already was, and that's always cool. So let's get on to the production of this album. This is actually produced by Colin Parkinson, who has come back in the band now. Who plays bass in the band as well, and a few other instruments, and it's mixed by Tony Draper. So it is definitely more of a raw sound than We Will Ride. I think We Will Ride had the cleanest sound, if you like, and this has more of a raw edge to it, I would say. It's definitely different sounding. Don't let the raw edge thing put you off. Every instrument is very prevalent in the mix, especially bass is really ramped up. It's got a really decent sound, and I think all instruments across the board. You've got crunchy guitar, drums are really high in the mix, which is always good for me. But I think that bass is really prominent, more than it ever has been, I would say. So a raw sound, but with a more raw sound, but with a real punch to it as well. And that adds I think that does add some heaviness to this album. I think the production and the mix on this album, which is never a bad thing. So let's get on to the guys in the band. Of course, Nathan James, like I said, the mainstay in this band. Vocal ability is just off the charts, man. And to, like I've already mentioned, Nathan James live, just produce it just with ease live as well. So that's, there's not a lot of vocalists that can emulate what they do on record to what they do live. Nathan James has never had that problem. He's one of the best rock vocalists out there. I mean, can hit some heights. And what I loved about the last album and this one is the variety Nathan has in his voice. He's always got that real cool high end and power in his vocals, but when he shows emotion in the sort of almost more subdued, slower songs, he really, really captures my ear with that. And he's perfect at that, you know, showing emotion in the slower ballads, if you like, and then just exploding into his brilliant vocal at high end. It's just amazing. So you got Colin Parkinson. I've mentioned him a lot already. So he helped with the first 3 Inglorious albums, I believe. So he was just out of the last one and now he's back. So songwriting, obviously, across this album. I'll get onto the songs in a minute, but it is just class. It's really strong this time around. So him and Nathan apparently just met up over a beer. I think apparently, so I'm reading, Nathan messaged him, asked him to want to go for a beer, and then they started songwriting and it all poured together and it really worked well. And he does also, apart from the bass, a load of other instruments, including acoustic guitar, a bit of electric guitar as well. So he's all over this album, Colin Parkinson. I've already mentioned the bass sound on this album. Some of the bass lines as well that are played. Wow. I mean, man, some of them are the driving force behind some of these songs. And the bass sound is so prominent. It's a massive part of this Inglorious album. Whereas I think before it was more like, yes, it was great bass playing, but it was almost like hidden in the mix. Great bass sounding album, the last album, We Will Ride, by the way. But there was never songs driven by the bass. That's what you get on this album. Then you've got Richard Shaw on guitar. I've already mentioned how heavy some of these songs are on this album. And he's best known for being in the band Cradle of Filth. So I'm saying heavy. Inglorious fans, don't worry. This is not, you know, black metal or anything like that, or, you know, extreme metal. It is definitely Inglorious, but you get that extra little bit of crunch on the guitars on a few of these songs, which I will go into. And I think Richard Shaw really gives that. And there's some great soloing across this album. Some of it's really explosive, and where the songs are written with a short solo sometimes, which is sometimes for the best. They come and go, these solos, but man, well written, the solos, they really are. And then you've got Henry Rogers on the drums. So, yeah, I've already mentioned the sound of this album. It's really punchy, but a little bit raw, like I said. Henry Rogers is a great drummer across this. Is so tight. I think he's a friend of Nathan James. I'm not sure if he's been on an album before for Inglorious, so another new member, I believe. But man, you wouldn't believe it that these guys are getting together. Like, most of it new as well. It's such a tight album. It sounds like they've been together for years. It really does. Everyone, of course, are top-notch musicians, and it shows throughout this album. So as normal, I talk about my favourite songs, and we start off with the brilliant Testify. This opens up the album. It's typical Inglorious. This one is real proper Inglorious. It pulls every punch you can think of. That's a really good thing, typical Inglorious, by the way. Blues tinged riffs, Nathan's high-end vocals, of course, a really catchy chorus, classic rock, just done right for the modern audience for sure. You can hear Colin Parkinson's influence in the band straight away. The bass is really prominent, like I've already said, in the mix, and it has a real driving force in the band sound. An explosive start to the album. Each You Alive is the second track, and the next one I want to talk about is a great song, man. And I mentioned heaviness already. I think this is one of the heaviest songs I've ever written. Richard Shaw really shines here as the heavy riffing in the verses really ups the ante of this song. A great solo as well. I mean, I could talk about every solo. All of them are great, but there's some real catchy and really inventive parts as well. This one, again, is really short but really well written. And this is a really heavy song, like I said. But as usual, it's a really melodic chorus, as expected by Inglorious. Next up is the new single, Devil Inside. So that heavy side of the band again follows through with this great song. It's a real energetic, chuggy at times rocking track. This heavier side of Inglorious is definitely welcomed by me because it will really reflect well in their live performances. I think they've already got a tour lined up across the country. A great start to the album. Next track I want to talk about is Believe. A beautiful song, man, where the band sort of slow it down for a really dynamic ballad. Colin Parkinson handling the acoustic guitar on this one. Sounds gorgeous. It really does. Nathan's vocals here are just immense. As tone, I mentioned his tone already, I think, in that sort of lower range, in that emotional part, and just him and Colin Parkinson working really well together, you know, really dynamic and really hits the feels, if you like. There's loads of light and shade on this song, as we hit heavier sections throughout it as well. And it really makes for a dynamic song. Like I said, excellent stuff. One of the band's best songs, I would say. Powerful, emotional, classic. Next up, I want to talk about Stand. A chance for Colin Parkinson to really take centre stage here with an amazing bass-driven track. It's quite a dark, sort of heavy track in the verses, but then we sort of hit a really cool, ascending, inglorious chorus that is, again, unmistakably the band. Then I want to talk about In Your Eyes. I love this track, man. It's very different, I would say. It's rock, it's heavy rock still, but it has a bit of a galloping, almost immigrant song type groove in the verses, but such a different sounding song at the same time. It's also one of the most melodic tracks on offer, an almost 70s feel to the chorus. It reminds me of something that, when I'm listening to it, I've heard this album about 3 to 4 times now, and when I'm listening to the song, it reminds me of something, but I can't quite put my finger on it. I think this will be one of the fans' favourites as well. And then I want to talk about Silence. And again, a slower sort of song, man. And this band can really write an excellent slow song. I've got to say, they're some of my favourite songs. Not sure if I would call this a ballad as such. It's got ballad tendencies, but there are plenty of really beautiful moments with, again, really heavy, explosive parts as well. Again, a chance for Nathan to really flex his vocal prowess, a highlight of the album. And then I want to talk about the last track on the album, Power of Truth. The final track, like I said, another beautiful bit of acoustic guitar by Colin Parkinson, with him and Nathan only for about a minute and 40 odd seconds before the band crash in. And when the band crash in, hairs go on the back of your neck, come up on the back of your neck. It's the perfect closer, as it's probably the most epic track on the album. Epic in sound, not in length. It's only 4.5 minutes or something like that, but it's very explosive and dynamic as well. We dip back into that sort of beautiful acoustic part at the end of the song as well, so it's really nicely bookended, this song. What an epic close to the album. So guys, that's my review of Inglorious and 5. It's an early review. June the 6th it's coming out on Frontiers. You're going to love this. Inglorious fans, you're going to be very, very happy with this indeed. Let me know if you're going to get it, if you're thinking about getting it, if you love the single so far, in the comments below. I'll see you soon.